на наш дуже довгоочікуваний, власне, зустріч, де ми хочемо представити велику працю, а то є в справі деколонізації нашої української культури. Я буду говорити по-англійськи, і та лекція буде в англійській мові. Вона буде зарекордована, і можна буде дістати її в українській мові через текст. Так що Зачинаємо. I would like to welcome all of you to this long-awaited session on Zoom that we will be holding on the subject of the decolonization of Ukrainian culture. And we are very happy to have the president of the UNWLA with us among all of the honored guests that are here. So welcome. I'd like to say a little background before we get to the main subject of our evening. Through the centuries, when Russia and all its political forms had control over Ukraine, the Russification of Ukraine's culture was part of its imperial legacy, and Ukraine was blatantly denigrated to inferior status. And most recently, as a non-existent country by Vladimir Putin's speech. Only a semblance of cultural identity temporarily flourished during the Ukrainization policy of the Soviet Union in the 1920s. Soon afterwards, during the 1930s, when the establishment could no longer tolerate independent, ambitious cultural movements, it clamped down and artists were either killed, deported to concentration camps, or sent out of the borders of the Soviet Union. This culminated in the Great Purge, when Ukrainian intellectuals were exterminated en masse. What followed was a continuation of the Russification policies. Ukrainian artists, and here I speak of all of the arts, were identified as either Soviet or Russian. The Russian culture was dependent on the talents of Ukrainian writers, musicians, painters, etc. If you consider how many Ukrainian artists have been appropriated by Russia, then it seems that Russian culture is truly based on the talent of the Ukrainian intelligentsia. Recently, in an interesting article by Katerina Dendik, she claimed that the foundation of Russia's culture is really Ukrainian. Take these facts into account. The founders of Russian art are considered to be Volodymyr Borovikovsky and Dmytro Levitsky, Ukrainians. The best exponent of the Russian soul is Ilya Ryepin, Ukrainian. The father of futurism is David Burlyuk, Ukrainian. The father of Russian avant-garde is Kazimir Malevich. Most of the academics, professors, and rectors of the Imperial Academy of Art in St. Petersburg were Ukrainian. The overcoat, as the literary Russian piece from which all famous Russian literature sprung, was by no other but our Ukrainian Hohol. The founder of the Russian theater, Anton Chekhov, Ukrainian. The founders of European classical music in Russia, Dmytro Bortnyansky and Maxim Berezovsky. Similar foundations established in ballet and theatrical productions were by Ukrainians. We see these facts as the root of our decolonization project. The great Russian culture, we are deconstructing this myth and reclaiming our Ukrainian heritage. It has been always difficult for us to correct misinformation in the arts. The propaganda and influence of Russia determined how our artists would be portrayed in everything. Most institutions were guided by professors coming out of prestigious schools where they were steeped in Russian history through the lens of Russian imperialism. Only recently, we see positive signs due mainly to the ongoing war Major art institutions are listening to Ukrainian art experts, correcting misinformation, but there is still much to be done. In the spring of this year, we held an informative Zoom session with Tatiana Filewska, art historian with the Ukrainian Institute of Art in Kyiv. She presented us with many of the achievements of decolonization and listed many helpful links for us to use. She also said that the Institute will introduce a guide for all institutions to use in correcting misinformation, and it will be distributed worldwide. With that inspiration, we, Suyuzanki, always interested in promoting our rich cultural heritage, decided to venture into a project for all of us with the assistance of a toolkit or handbook. I would like to introduce to you at this time our summer intern, Romana Mikhailevich, a truly gifted and exemplary representative of our young Ukrainians. Romana came here from Stri on a global scholarship program, having achieved this possibility through numerous exams and interviews. Her achievements include winning national research contests in philosophy and economics and attaining a scholarship to Yale University, where she is a freshman this year. She has also documented her experiences in traveling from Stri to Yahidny in the Chernihiv region during the first year of the war and recently published into a book. Romana will do the launch of our toolkit, which she primarily designed. We hope that it will give you the support and the resources which you can use in our national endeavor to correct the Russification that we feel you have encountered in so many different situations. And once she is finished with her presentation, we will then ask you for your questions. Romana, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Pani Oksana, for such an amazing introduction. And I'm very happy to welcome everyone today to the presentation of Decolonization Toolkit. And I hope that it will be very useful and will help you to become engaged in decolonization effort. So Pani Oksana provided a lot of background information, so I will try to jump ahead and talk mainly about the toolkit, but something I still like to say is that cultural heritage is central to protecting our sense of who we are, and it just gives us the connection to our past and to certain social values, beliefs, and traditions, and those traditions allow us to identify ourselves with others and deepen our sense of unity. So today we want to offer you support in making several steps toward reclaiming our cultural heritage and reconnecting with our culture. So we will start with visual arts. It is important to reclaim Ukrainian artists who have been mislabeled as Russian in museums, since it restores historical accuracy and cultural recognition. The misattribution of Ukrainian artists' works to Russian identity leads to the erasure of Ukraine's distinct artistic heritage and contributes to the marginalization of Ukrainian culture. So the first, I will lead this as like step-by-step instruction. So we created a database of museums that has active links to museums' web pages. Based on your location, you can choose a museum from the list or any other museum you would like to work with. So that's a screenshot from the database, and you can see that all those blue underlinings are active links to the museums, and there are descriptions for them. Then I decided to choose one museum and use it as an example. And since I'm at Yale, I decided to use our art gallery and guide you through the step-by-step process, including this example. So, for example, we found Yale University Art Gallery in the database. We clicked on the link, and every website usually has the collection link which you can click, or like it can be named archives or current and past exhibitions. So you click there, and after you find this database of artworks, you can use search and look for the Ukrainian artists that are most often mislabeled. All these buttons and formats of databases will change somewhat from one museum to another based on how they format their website, but the idea will remain the same. So now when we found this search, we will look up artists. For that purpose, we compiled a list of artists that were already reclaimed by Ukrainian art historians. Mostly it is MET, Metropolitan Museum, that recognizes Ukrainian artists as Ukrainians. So we'll be using this museum as a reference while reaching out to the other museums we'll be working with. We have this list of reclaimed artists. There is a link in the toolkit. And here is a screenshot from the list. We have artist names, sources, and also attached screenshots of the website whose museum we are referencing. So for example, for Kazimir Malevich, we have a screenshot from MET website, and also several links to the articles that claim Kazimir Malevich as Ukrainian. So then we take our artist's name from the list. For example, here we have Kazimir Malevich. So we would take him and try to search him up in the museum's database. The important part about this step is that you might have to search several times, trying different names transliterations, because in the toolkit, we have Kazimir Malevich spelled in Ukrainian transliteration, but on the website, it might be in Russian transliteration or in some ambiguous transliteration. So you have to search considering this factor. And so we have four results for Kazimir Malevich, and we see that he's labeled as Russian, and we have Ukraine in parentheses. So it's not the worst case scenario, because at least we have Ukraine, but still, this case is worth reaching out, because Kazimir Malevich never identified himself as Russian. So we should not let the museum place his artworks under the umbrella of so-called Great Russian culture. So we saw this mistake, and we will address it by drafting a request to the museum. You can find the contact information on the same website where you search for the artist. It is usually at the very bottom of the page. So what we did, we drafted a template for addressing a museum, which you can use to draft yours. Here you can see the screenshot of the template. Based on what artist you're trying to reclaim, you should include a link to the museum that recognizes this artist as Ukrainian, and also the links to the articles. All those links you can find under the sources in the list of reclaimed artists. So here we have sources for Kazimir Malevich, for example. After that, hopefully you will connect with the person who works in the museum and start a conversation with them and work on the labeling changes. If you will have any questions in the process, you can reach out to me. And also we have compiled a list of art historians who can help you. You can find it in the toolkit as well. The final step is spreading awareness about Ukrainian artists by offering museums to use the postcards we have created or sharing them with your friends. So for visual art, we have Kazimir Malevich, Archip Kuinji, Ilya Repin, Ivan Ivazovsky, and David Burluk. The postcards have two sides. One side is the visual where the artist and his painting is presented. And we have a quotation from Lisa Korneychuk from her hyperallergic article on decolonization. And on the backside, there is information about the artist as well as UNWLA logo. So this is the basis that you can do, but if you see that the museum is very responsive or you can and want to do more, you can also use the database of artists. And we created this big database of Ukrainian artists and artists of other nationalities whose artworks were appropriated by Russia. You can look them up in the museum's collection by the name, like we did with the list of reclaimed artists. Or you can also use filters on the museum's website. For example, in Yale Art Gallery, we have a filter called culture, so we would go there. And we have Soviet and Russian artists, and we would choose those. You can also include Ukrainian artists to make sure the transliteration of their names in Ukrainian cities is correct, but focus on the Ukrainian artists that are labeled as Russian, because that's the main thing to reclaim our artists. So you can go through what they have in those categories and search the names in our database of artists using Control F or Command F function. And the more efficient way will depend on the museum's website. And the final step is just like always, when you check the artist or search the artist through the database, you will draft a request, but this time you will use sources from the database of artists column. You might want to do some additional research, or you might want to reach out to someone and try to get help with communication and proceed like that. Next, we'll shift our attention to music. For centuries, Russian authorities and institutions have inaccurately claimed Ukrainian composers as part of their own cultural heritage. They were distorting historical realities and denying Ukraine the rightful recognition of its artistic contributions. So what we will ask you to do is to promote Ukrainian classical composers. To do that, we want you to reach out to your radio station. You can search for the ones nearby by using My Tuner webpage. There is a state filter, which you can see here, and you can choose your state and see which ones are nearby. After you choose your radio station by clicking on it, you'll have the next page with contacts of the radio station. And there might be an email right there, but you might have to follow the link to go to the radio station's website and find their email address there. When you have their contact information, you should reach out to them. And again, we have a template which you can use to reach out to them to your radio station. And your template will include another list we've compiled of Ukrainian composers and links to their recordings and the websites where radio stations can purchase those. And then again, the final thing you can do is use our postcards to spread the word about Ukrainian composers. For music, we have Artem Vedel, Mykola Daletsky, Maxim Berezovsky, Dmitro Bortnyansky, and Semen Hulak-Artemovsky. The next field of decolonization we are looking at is filmmaking. Ukrainian filmmaking is a powerful medium to showcase the richness of the Ukrainian language, traditions, and history, and it can play a vital role in preserving Ukrainian identity in the face of historical attempts of cultural assimilation. So step one, we would recommend doing is familiarize yourself with Ukrainian films. This is a screenshot of the Ukrainian Institute website. There you can find Ukrainian movies and links where to watch them. And step two, organizing a screening using the Razom Cinema instructions. These instructions are also included in the toolkit. And so you would pick your film, pick location, and send out invitations, and everything is written out in this toolkit. If you have probably the hardest part about organizing a screening is getting a license for the screening. If you need help with that, you can contact Polina Buciak from Razom. And also my personal recommendation for organizing a screening is movie Dobush. I've watched it recently. The director of Columbia's movie Ukrainian film club came to Yale, and he organized a streaming of this movie, and they started filming it around 2014, and so far it's the most expensive Ukrainian movie, and the richness of Ukrainian culture there is amazing, and all the costumes, and also they used a Western Ukrainian dialect to make it very authentic. So if you're considering which one to screen, I would highly recommend it. And final step, just like always, spread awareness. We have, again, a series of postcards for Ukrainian artists in filmmaking, and we have Les Kurbas, Alexander Dovzhenko, Yura Gnat, Ivan Kavaleridze, and Yuri Ilyenko. The next field is cuisine. And what we would recommend doing there is finding a food bank in your area. You can find it using the website Feeding America. There you can also filter your area by state. And we have not created an example of email to the food bank because it is more case by case, this is something that should be addressed case by case, and the circumstances could be very different. So it might be even better to reach the food bank by phone and ask them like how they work, and just have a more direct way of communication. So what you would do, you would reach out to them offering to cook something from Ukrainian cuisine. And when you find your food bank, there is a phone and their address and also a website. So you can either go there and communicate with people directly, or you could reach out to them by phone. Step 3 is spreading the word about Ukrainian cuisine. And so we created a list of Ukrainian cookbooks and vlogs, which you can recommend to your families and friends. And the last part is literature. So for literature, we focused on reaching out to libraries. The first step would be finding a library in your area. You can use it using libraries.org website, which is also on the toolkit, and you can find libraries in your state. Then we have a template of an email, which would ask to review the classification of Ukrainian writers in the library. And in the email, you would include this list. And this list has about 20 or 30 Ukrainian artists, and it has sources which which prove that the artist is actually Ukrainian, and 20 or 30 is not as many as we have for the artists. We have about 200 for the artists, so going through like this smaller list will not be hard for the library. And for literature, we have, again, 5 postcards. We were creating postcards with Ukrainian writers from executed Renaissance. And we have Mikhail Semenko, Микола Хвильовий, Валеріан Підмогильний, Микола Куліш, Микола Заров, and Miroslava Sopilka. And you can also offer to the libraries not only use those as a postcards, but maybe print them and use them as bookmarks or something like that, and distribute them at the circulation desk. And if you have any questions, reach out to me or to Pani Oksana. We'll be very happy to answer any of your questions and to help with anything you might need. And also, I would like to say thank you for giving me this opportunity to work on this amazing project. UNWLA was truly inspiring, and I'm very happy that I got this chance to work with people who are passionate about Ukrainian culture and dedicate a large part of their lives to defending their identity. Thank you so much.
Romana, thank you very much for giving us this presentation and for being totally involved in this. But I have a question regarding the actual toolkit presentation that each one of our members will receive. Do you have that in like the PowerPoint that you sent me, where it defines various places that you can link, that you can click on, and then you get that information?
You mean all the links are on the toolkit? So
yes.
if you go to the toolkit, you just like the hyperlinks, they are bolded and they are in different color than all the other text. So you would just click there and it would send you to the lists and to the databases.
Okay, because it was in a different format and it's very easy to follow in that progression of each page, because you it's very easy. So when you receive it in a different format, it will be easy to find what you are looking for, and then to find the other link that takes you to whatever else you're doing. And it's beautifully done by Romana. So I was just pointing that out. What questions do you have? If you would like to raise your hand.
Someone has raised their hand.
Okay, can we unmute? Can you unmute yourself, or do we have to ask someone to unmute you? Irene Yarosevich has asked, how is you, whoops.
Whoops, I can speak now, sorry.
Okay, very good.
Hi.
Hi.
I am a little bit on the techno-ignorant side, and I couldn't find the raised hand. Anyhow, дякую дуже, Romana. How is you, for purposes of this project, how is Ukrainian defined? Is it, and I'll follow up on the question a little bit later. Is it defined by place of birth, by the artist's self-identity? Is it defined regardless of the artist's self-identity, ethnic heritage? Because self-identity, sometimes under the Soviet Union, people would say there's something that they weren't, or even under the Russian Empire, in order to succeed professionally. And that's the first question. And then what do you do with people if it's place of birth, if they are a non-Ukrainian ethnicity, if they are Jewish, Crimean, Polish, how is that managed?
So when I was compiling lists and databases, first of all, thank you so much for your question. It's very important to address. And that was something that I struggled with at the beginning because like it's hard to claim someone's identity. But how I approached this is I looked at a person's biography. And for example, if someone spent the majority of their life in Ukraine and their art was like focused on Ukrainian motifs and Ukrainian culture, then I would assign like to them Ukrainian identity. Also on the database of artists, we have, for example, Jewish Ukrainian, or so we didn't just assign like Ukrainian. We just did like, for example, Ukrainian was Polish origin, or so every time like this identifier is a little bit modified based on artists' life path. And for some people who were born in Ukraine, but for example, they studied here for a couple of years, but then went to St. Petersburg and spent the rest of their lives there. And their artworks were focused on some Russian motifs and something like that. We did not claim them as Ukrainians because at this point they've immigrated and lost touch with their Ukrainian heritage, so we did not include them.
Okay, so it's not just one factor, it was a sort of a combination of the factors, place of birth, motifs, self-identity.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Дякую, thank you.
I see Marusha Flynn has her hand raised. Marushu.
Hi, добрий вечір. Romana, thank you so much for the wonderful presentation. And we're so proud that such a young person like yourself and from Ukraine has taken on this wonderful project for the Women's League. And the fact that you're at Yale, wonderful. Congratulations. Anyway, the question I have is relating to visual arts. And I understand if you're searching on Ukrainian artists, let's say the paintings at museums, and then when you search further and click on them, it'll say, like the example you gave, it'll say actually Russian, but Ukraine in parentheses. I'm sure there's a lot of cleaning up, because what I've noticed a lot, there's reference to either Russian Empire as when Ukraine was part of the Russian Empire. Sometimes it's the Soviet Union when Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union. So I could see where there's a lot of cleaning up to be done. But what about art that is just 100% labeled Russian? We're also not that familiar with everything that is, Ukrainian that is labeled Russian. How would we approach that? Is that something maybe Mrs. Filatova from Kiev could help us with? Provide us with lists of artists that are 100% labeled Russian, that are truly Ukrainian artists, because we're not really familiar with all of them.
So in the list that we've compiled, we've also included artists that are claimed 100% to be Russians, but like their biography and life path tells us that they are actually Ukrainian. Also on the database, we have like some Lithuanian or Estonian artists, or like some other countries that were colonized too. And the database of the artists, we have the basis of this database was taken from Ukrainian art historian Oksana Semeniuk. And so what I did, I just went through the list of names she gave me, and I compiled a table with like facts of their biography and the sources linked. so we would have like this organized, but mainly the list of names that we have is from Oksana Semeniuk's work in Zimmerli Art Museum, because it has a lot of Ukrainian, Russian artworks and Eastern European artworks in general. So what she did, she looked at the art that is claimed to be Russian, and she checked every artist. So we already have those included, the ones that are claimed 100% Russian.
Okay, so you do actually have lists that we could start with. Okay.
And we also are in contact with Oksana Semeniuk, and she has promised to do also a session with us in the future. So we can also tap into her personally and get a lot of information. Is your question answered, Marusю?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so I see that Patricia Kreisa has a question. Please, Patricia.
Yes. Excuse me. Thank you both for your excellent work. Very, very impressive and very necessary. My question, I think, goes toward what's next, even though we're just getting started. But I'm just curious, is there going to be either any kind of a feedback loop or any kind of a repository where this information, once the inquiry is made at the local level to the museum, how do you know? What do we do with that information? Are we gathering, data on results by contacting XYZ Museum? Where are we going in the next step? Even though I realize that might be premature, but
it's go ahead. You want to say it, Roman? Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think that's a wonderful idea that we have not addressed yet, but I think the solution to this can be, I can create a Google form, and once the branch made some steps toward like this decolonization effort, they can fill out the form and like click at like which museum they contacted and like what was the response, and maybe like which artists they wanted to reclaim. And I think this Google form would be our like gathering of information, and we could track how the progress is going in this way.
That sounds like a very good first idea. And thank you, Patty, for bringing that up, because it is important to follow through on what we have started and what we have accomplished. Thank you. We have a question from Mariana Tretiak. Mariana.
Hi, Romana, amazing job, Molodets. This is really the culmination of a huge amount of work, and I just again want to really thank you for what you've done and the tools you've given our members to advocate for this locally. The kind of one thing I wanted to flag for those on the call in part is that the artists that were chosen, specifically the ones that have already been quote unquote decolonized at the MoMA and at the Met, were chosen because that's kind of an easier lift for an advocate to say, I don't have to write my own like PhD to tell you why this should be decolonized. You can just point to the foremost museums in America who've already done it. So I think that I would highly encourage everyone to start with these artists because they're the ones that kind of require the least amount of lift and the least amount of convincing. The other thing I just really wanted to flag for everyone who's taking this up as a kind of as their cause, definitely you want to try to get involved with the institutions that you're trying to sway, whether that is kind of knowing the right person to reach out to at the museum or at the orchestra. It's really about building connections so that your voice is heard a bit more loudly and heard by the correct person. So I would highly encourage anyone who's really feeling passionate about this, and this is such important work. Culture is really the engine for the lives that we live. So it's really important to take this up. But I would really encourage all the different branches or all the different groups that are starting to work on this to look and see kind of who do you have as an ally already in some of these places? Does anyone know someone on the board at a local museum? Does anyone have a friend that might be involved in the orchestra? You have natural allies that are already out there. So I just, again, want to thank you guys for putting together this incredible toolkit, and cannot wait to see what all of our amazing members do with this.
Thank you, Mariana, the advocacy chairman, who really knows how to push things along. We appreciate the information that you've added because it's very important. Thank you. And we have a question from, is it Dana or Dana Bala?
Dana.
Dana, please,
Hi.
Dana.
Thank you. And thank you for all the work. I can tell it was a huge effort to put this all together. I just had one question, kind of going back to the original question about how the artists were identified, because as we all know, Ukraine's changing borders depending on what decade we're talking about. So were certain, say, I don't know, if an artist actually was, now it's in Poland, but it was originally a Ukrainian village and they still kept their Ukrainian ethnicity. So is that still considered a Ukrainian artist? Like, how far back did we go in identifying Ukrainian artists that were identified as something else? You know, World War II, World War I and World War II changed the borders so often.
Yes, so I think it relates quite a lot to the question that was already asked about how we identify the identity. But what I would say is that, like, we looked at the location, but location was not the only determining factor, because we also looked at, like, whether this person went, for example, to Ukrainian school, and have, like, what was the culture in their family, so to say. And like, we just like took one artist, like, one by one, and looked, like, at them, trying, like, to see critically whether we can actually claim them as Ukrainian.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Dana. Any other questions? Natalia Dobrovolska. She writes, Taras Shevchenko is a great, do you want to speak? Taras Shevchenko is a great example, spent most of his life not in Ukraine. She gives that as an example to the last question that Dana had asked. Is there anyone else who would like to make a comment or to ask a question?
Yes, I would like to ask a question.
Yes, Nina.
Hi. Yes, excellent presentation. I love the toolkit. I think you did a fantastic job. So thank you so much. Hi, Mom. I want to just ask you whether there is a way for us to know if someone's doing some work and someone's doing the same work. Is there a way to check so that, you know, if I want to contact a museum, someone else hasn't already contacted that museum?
I'm not exactly sure how communication in the branches is organized, but how we divided museums, the very first database that I showed the screenshot from was the region, and all the museums are in the region, and it follows like this. So the regions that are listed are the areas of UNWLA branches.
Okay, so if I live in Los Angeles, I should just focus on those that are in Los Angeles.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much for your question.
And then once you have gathered that information and you have accomplished something, then you send it to this Google page that we will have, this Google Drive, and that information will be there. And then others can look into it and see, it has already been accomplished. So we won't have to repeat the steps. We'll go elsewhere. So I think that's probably going to be helpful in the future.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? If there are no other questions, then what I would like to ask you is that if you, I'm sorry, there's someone else. Irena,
Oksana, I just learned how to raise my hand.
Okay.
Okay, so I just, for fun, I went onto the Smithsonian collection and I typed in under search. This is for all their collections. This means objects, icons, paintings, books, etc. And I typed in the word Russia, and there are 25,000 objects that have the word Russia in it. And that includes the papers of Alexander Archipenko. He is listed under Russia. So he's also listed under Ukrainian.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you do when there is one accurate listing and one inaccurate listing? He's in the part of the Russia collection for sure. He's also identified in the text is the word Ukrainian.
So I think, if I may, I think that this is where the work to kind of find the people at the institution, like my next step here would be to get in touch with a curator or someone who's really in charge of collections to talk to them about addressing kind of these structural issues or these cataloging issues. There's certainly, like, if he's already been recategorized somewhat, then that means that the initial kind of advocacy push has been done, and we just need to get to the right person who's in charge of the catalog to update the catalog to make sure that that's correct. So I definitely think, as I said, similar to political advocacy, you certainly can just call the 1-800 number or fill out the form on the congressman's website. That's not going to be as efficient as writing an email to the legislative director. So I think that this is, like, as an organization, if we have this is something, I think our DC branch, which is where the Smithsonian is, that the kind of fact finding to find out who's the right person to reach out to is incredibly necessary to push this kind of thing along.
And also to add, I think this is where you arm yourself with someone who is respected, such as Tatiana Filewska or Oksana Semenyuk, and get them on board so that you have that expert opinion that you can present and, follow through with that. Thank you.
May I say something, Oksana?
Yes, Marusha. Yes, okay. Marusha Flynn.
Yes, I also wanted to add, we shouldn't forget that we have our Ukrainian Museum in New York. And we have a director who's very knowledgeable, and he also has connections to many museums. That was definitely a benefit because of his past experience working with European museums and here in the United States. So I think he would be a very good one to check with, that he can actually guide us or direct us to where we should go, or perhaps he might even have some answers.
Absolutely. Thank you, Marusha. We should really take more advantage of our connections with our Ukrainian museum and have them help us on this pathway. Thank you for your suggestion. Are there any other questions? I would like to say that sometimes after a session like this, ideas come to your mind, and when they do, please write to me, write to Romana, any other suggestions you might have or additions that we could make to the toolkit. whatever comes to mind, because as I said, this is like a seed that we have planted, and we would like to continue this because it's going to be a long road to straighten out information like you have at the Smithsonian. So we really need a lot of work, and we need your input. So please share any thoughts that you have with us. And also, I would like to just have you put on your calendar that we have 2 upcoming cultural events. On November 11th, we will have a presentation with Anna Patelina. She will give us more depth of understanding in our decolonization efforts, and it would be preserving Ukrainian culture in times of war. So I will send you a Zoom link for this presentation on November the 11th. And then on December 4th, we will have a literary discussion with Halina Kruk, who is one of the 3 recipients of the Kovalev Prize this year. So that will be on December 4th, and I will also send you information on that, but please put it on your calendar. I want to thank again Romana for all of the work that she has put into this project, and we will be sending to you by email the toolkit that you can all use, and I would ask you to share it with all of your friends, your branch members, and just get everybody involved. It's a big project, it's a national project, and we want it to succeed, and we really need your input. So thank you all. I really appreciate. Слава Україні, слава вам, що ви тут прибули. Дуже вам дякую. Всього
Героям
найкращого.
слава.
До побачення всім.